Hello everyone, Azortharion here once again, and welcome to my third video covering all the changes in the Hunter rework for the WoW Within expansion. Today we're focusing on Marksmanship, and I'll be going through every talent, both old and new, and discussing how they might impact your builds, playstyle, flavor, and feel. Along the way, I'll share my thoughts on what could be designed better or changed. My hope is that you'll watch this video and form your own opinions and share your feedback with Blizzard. We're currently in a crucial feedback stage, and your input could make a real difference, so make sure to head over to the forums and let your thoughts be heard. I'm also making this video with raid testing today in mind. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stream the raid test, though I will be participating, and in the description below, you can find some talent strings that I recommend trying out to have a productive test tonight. As always, if you want to support me being a full-time hunter and pick up some sick perks at the same time, please check out my Patreon in the description below. There you can get the Hunter UI and weak hours that I use, and personal coaching from me on a weekly or monthly basis, access to my min-maxing Hunter compendium, and much more. So with that out of the way, let's get straight into Marksmanship in the WoW Within. So starting right here, aim shot is still the core ability, as is rapid fire. Multi-shot remains a talent, which is a bit of a shame. I still feel it should be baseline alongside with trick shots. So it still remains the case that our baseline, or rather our AoE kit, still costs 2 points to dip into with both multi-shot and trick shots. But then there are also quite a few other talents that sort of amplify the AoE that... so like, just to have basic AoE functionality, you need to invest two talent points. But if you want sort of to actually be competent at AoE damage, you'll have to invest a little bit more. Potentially 3 or 4 points, depending if you want heavy ammo or light ammo. Next up is precise shots. So this used to be a 2-pointer, it is now a 1-pointer, and it has the same value as the old 2-pointer. So 70% more damage for stacks, and also this is added, so this is basically reworked. And also the abilities increased by precise shots also cost 50% less focus. So like arcane shot and multi-shot with precise shots are going to cost 10 focus instead of 20. You'll also notice that instead of generating, well, so basically it used to be the case that 1 point of precise shots would generate, well, it actually would do less damage. It used to be the precise shots was RNG, in whether it would generate 1 or 2 stacks of it. Now it always generates 2, so the rotation is a bit more predictable in this manner. Next up is surging shots, which works the same as usual. A significant buff to rapid fire's damage, and aim shot has a 15% chance to reset the cooldown of rapid fire. Next up is streamline. Rapid fire's damage is increased by 15%, so we're looking at 50% damage increase to rapid fire so far, and also causes your next aim shot to cast 30% faster. By the way, the build I've picked here is just kind of a rough example of how a build might look like. You know, I'd probably pick streamline for most builds. Don't really read this as like a build that you should run. I've just put in something because it looked nice on the video. Alright, next up is improved steady shot. So this is just the talent that actually makes steady shot generate some focus instead of just being a super low DPS value filler. A little bit disappointed that this is still a talent when it feels like it should be super baseline functionality. And it's just one of those like, and often we don't even pick it because we don't really need extra focus at this point. Like, we're definitely not focus limited in any major way as marksmanship hunters, especially with the change to make precise shots reduce the focus cost of the abilities affected. Next up is crack shot, which is also something I feel should be baseline. It's what reduces the arcane shot and chimera shot focus cost down to 20 instead of 40, which is the baseline. Once again, one of those talents that probably shouldn't be a talent because everyone picks it all the time and we just kind of take it for granted. And you know, there will definitely be room for equally powerful but far more interesting talents in this row here. Next up is the first new talent, or completely new talent at least, which is penetrating shots. Gain critical strike damage equal to 20% of a critical strike chance. So this is a bit similar to the Beast Mastery video you watched yesterday, and it's basically one of those mechanics that contribute a lot to crit value for all hunter specs going in the WoW Within. So it seems that Blizzard, with a variety of mechanics, are basically trying to ensure, maybe not ensure, but certainly push us towards crit being a very powerful signature hunter stat because it affects so many of our mechanics. And naturally, this will just be a significant increase to the value of crit for marksmanship hunters globally on top of other mechanics, as we're going to see. Trick shots works the same as useful. It is still like has a minimum target cap of 3 targets, meaning multi-shotting 2 targets is usually not worth doing because you will not get trick shots from it, and it doesn't really do worthwhile damage. And the damage bonus that you get is 70%. Next up is Master Marksman. So you'll recall this possibly from the Dragonflight class tree. Basically just, you can think of it as basically 15% extra crit damage because it makes your melee and ranged special attack critical strikes cause the target to bleed for an additional 15% of the target dealt over 6 seconds. So along with penetrating shots, this significantly increases crit value and is a very powerful use of a talent. Next up is another new talent, Fan the Hammer. Rapid fire shoots 3 additional shots. So let's remind ourselves, so rapid fire normally shoots a stream of 7 shots at your target over 7 seconds. So increasing that to 10 is basically like increasing rapid fire's damage by 43%. So another way of putting it, so we have surging shots, which is plus 35%, streamline, which is plus 15%, and Fan the Hammer, which is plus 43%. So with all that in mind, we're basically looking at something like almost double damage from rapid fire through these 3 talent points. And the end result is that rapid fire's baseline damage is something like, let's see, 7 times, what's the tool? 7 times 55 AP, multiplied by 1.35, multiplied by 1.15. So a baseline rapid fire will do almost double the damage of an aim shot. And this is important to realize when you're doing your rotation, is that rapid fire is significantly higher value than aim shot, if not for the fact that aim shot also generates precise shot stacks, which we need for everything else. What you'll also notice so far is that things are looking, you know, on the fundamental mechanical side of things, pretty similar. And indeed, marksmanship will play pretty similarly in the War Within going forward. Yeah, a little bit of a diversion there. Moving on, so careful aim works the same as usual. Aim shot deals 50% bonus damage to targets who are above 70% HP. Unfortunately, while this is really strong for your opener and of course the first part of a fight, it is a bit of a shame in my opinion that this either doesn't maybe also give execute, or it was flipped to be execute instead, because execute is just usually a much more valuable damage profile. And indeed there are many cases of especially like raid end bosses where you actually hold damage in phase 1. So like Fyrak and Sylvanas had some of this, and Razagath had some of this. Sarkarith didn't really, there were some scenarios, but like 2 of the 3 Dragonflight raid end bosses, P1 damage wasn't worthless, but it was worthless past a certain point. And it was one of those cases where, for example, on Razagath, like when you were progging phase 1, or like progging in the beginning, it was basically not even worth running careful aim, because you would just be holding DPS for longer if you ran it, so you put the point elsewhere. And the fact that it doesn't offer an alternative, or like any additional value above 70% HP damage for you, is just a little bit disappointing. It's also like in Mythic Plus, when like you've barely even gotten your cooldowns off and like put down your volley and stuff before the mobs are close to below 70% HP. So especially in like short-lived stuff, it's just really annoying to play with compared to execute. Or indeed, like, honestly, it would probably just be better if this talent didn't exist and marksmanship's damage was increased to compensate. Because like, especially for short-lived stuff, it just feels really, like, it's still worth running, unfortunately, but it just feels bad all the time, in my opinion. Alright, next up is, you still have the choice node of heavy ammo or light ammo. So heavy ammo is generally like 3 to 5 target AoE, while light ammo is anything 7 targets or above. Still, like, this is one of the coolest choice nodes for marksmanship in my opinion. It's like, heavy ammo is basically what enables us to be one of the strongest specs in a game for fights like Primal Council, where it's just like 4 consistent targets all the time. Like, marksmanship's low target AoE is some of the best in the game thanks to heavy ammo. Next up is Bullet Storm. So it works the same as usual. Basically, whenever you like trick shots abilities hit, rapid fire and aim shot, you get a buff that stacks the damage of your multi-shot up to 70% for 15 seconds. And we'll see there are some other talents that lead to even more insane multi-shot damage. And the end result is, then we'll talk about this later, multi-shot damage in the War Within for marksmanship is pretty damn cracked. Whether that's a good or bad thing, we'll have a look at that. Next up is Lock and Load. It works the same as usual. One thing that you guys pointed out in my class tree video, which you can find in the description below, is that, of course, over here in the class tree, we have this, you and your pet have 2.5% increased attack speed per point, and it's a 2-pointer, so 5%. And if you don't have a pet, you get an additional 5% attack speed, meaning marksmanship hunters have a baseline plus 10% attack speed, which of course means, since Lock and Load is tied to ranged auto attacks, a 10% increase in proc rate for Lock and Load, which is nice. Next up is steady focus. I've already mentioned how we're not really focus limited at all, and like you won't spend a lot of time casting steady shots at all as marksmanship. That's probably one of the biggest playstyle changes. It's like steady shot is just you don't cast it as often. And that also means steady focus is just kind of terrible. And it's very unlikely that you'll ever pick it. Not only is it not very, like, the fact that I can almost hear you guys celebrating what I just said kind of tells us something about how maybe this talent just shouldn't exist, right? Because no one liked playing with it when it was optimal. And in fact, like, over the years, marksmanship hunters have bent over backwards to find reasons not to play steady focus, even when it was objectively the correct choice. People really don't want to play with this talent. Luckily, they probably won't have to in the War Within, but that also just, like, if a talent is both weak and lame, which is also something I alluded to in my Beast Mastery thing, talents that are both weak and not fun to play with probably just shouldn't exist and could be replaced with something that is at least one of those things. Or at least not one of those things. So yeah, at least powerful, or at least cool to play with. Next up is Death Blow. So this works the same as usual. Basically, aim shot and rapid fire will occasionally give you kill shot, and just kill shot procs that allow you to use them on any target. All good. Next up is Barrage, which is from the class tree previously. It works the same as usual. It's like 3-second channel, and it does moderate damage to all targets in front of you. But you'll see in a moment that there's something very interesting related to Barrage going into the War Within. But we'll get to that. Next up is a new talent, Night Hunter, which is just a reflavored version of, I believe it was called Focused Aim, I believe it was called. It's just critical strike chance for aim shot and rapid fire. 1 point. Pretty boring. Next up is Tactical Reload. This is what we got instead of double tap back in the day, which a lot of people disliked. I still prefer double tap, just because I just think it was more fun. It's a very impactful button to press. A flat 10% damage or cooldown reduction on aim shot and rapid fire is a big downgrade in terms of how it feels to play. But you know, it exists, and it's still obviously worth the pick because it's quite a good value. Next up is Serpent Stalker's Trickery, which is the same as usual. Aim shot also fires a Serpent Sting at the primary target. This is all good. Next up is Chimera Shot, which is basically them trying to give us something for 2 target. It is better than, so it's worse than Arcane Shot for single target, and obviously worse than Multi-Shot for anything 3 targets and above. It's an exclusively 2 target talent, but the thing is, it's used so rarely because there are so few pure 2 target encounters. I'm not intimately familiar with all the encounters of the raid in Season 1 of the War Within yet. But usually, even if it's a 2 target primarily encounter, if there's a significant amount of single target or like multi-target with more targets or fewer targets than 2, then like the talent just immediately dies. It really has to be pure 2 target, and it just kind of feels bad in my opinion. Next up is Killer Accuracy, which is kill shot, critical strike chance, and damage increased by 20%. If I recall correctly, and I might be wrong about this, but I believe it was only critical strike chance before. So this has been buffed, and basically with Death Blow, with Killer Accuracy, and with Pouch of Razor Fragments, kill shot can do quite a bit of extra damage. And of the crits of kill shot will be insanely huge, because we also have this class 3 talent called Improved Kill Shot that we've always had, which is just an additional 25% crit damage. And of course, then we have critical strike damage from penetrating shots. Like kill shot crits are very juicy in the War Within. Let's just put it like that. Next up is Rapid Fire Barrage. So this is the very interesting talent that I alluded to earlier. So instead of being like, it basically converts Barrage into quadruple rapid fire, or like quintuple rapid fire. So instead of Barrage now instead shoots rapid fires at your target and up to 4 nearby enemies at 30% effectiveness. But its cooldown is increased by 40 seconds. So this turns Barrage, which is normally a 20-second cooldown, into a really powerful burst AoE 1-minute cooldown. And as for any questions you have about this, so first of all, yes, the rapid fires fired by Rapid Fire Barrage are affected by trick shots and all that entails. This talent is currently a bit bugged on the beta and is like hitting fewer times than you'd expect it to, but like I'm reviewing talents based on how I expect them to work when the game functions correctly. But yeah, very, very powerful burst AoE button. Quite fun to play with as well. It does cost 2 points to invest in, so we'll see if it's even worth running in the majority of cases. But certainly a cool take on Barrage, which can normally feel a bit underwhelming to press for its huge focus cost and its long channel. It also reduces the the focus cost, I don't think it actually shows it here, but at least I noticed this in game, that the focus cost goes down to 30. Alright, next up is In the Rhythm. So this one we know, this has existed for a long time. When Rapid Fire fully finishes channeling, gain 8% haste for 6 seconds. So just a lot of passive haste will have this up a significant period of time. Who doesn't like haste? Alright, next up is Lone Wolf, and this warrants a longer discussion. So Lone Wolf now increases your damage by 5% when you do not have an active pet. It used to be 10%. And of course, this is a halving of the value of not having a pet out for marksmanship. Is it still worth running without a pet? Yes, largely thanks to mechanics like Trigger Finger, which is 5% increased attack speed when you don't have a pet. However, it is a significantly smaller DPS loss to run a pet, especially on single target. And because a pet is going to contribute, I don't know, like depends on a lot, but like maybe anywhere between 2 to 4% of your overall damage. Meaning that on single target in particular, running without Lone Wolf can gain you another talent point to invest elsewhere in, for example, In the Rhythm, and you can have the benefits of having a pet out. Now, the fact that Marksmanship has to make a concession on damage to even get this is a whole other discussion. I don't think Marksmanship deserves to be curbed so heavily by Lone Wolf. But in terms of what you're going to do, let's just assume it goes like this. So what are you going to do? Well, if you're fighting a single target raid encounter that really hurts, like you're worried about dying, then it may be worth taking a small damage hit to get out a leech pet and have significantly more leech and actually self-sustain. As we talked about in the class tree video, once again, linked in the description below, our like active survivability is significantly better in the War Within now, with Survival of the Fittest being a 2 charge, 1 minute cooldown now. And the main weakness we have is a lack of passive sustain. So running a ferocity pet for marksmanship in particular mitigates this hugely, but of course you will take a DPS loss of a couple of percent to do so. For AoE, obviously having a pet out is still really bad because your pet doesn't contribute to AoE damage, and all of your juicy AoE abilities are now doing 5% less damage. So in Mythic Plus, you pretty much never want to run a pet unless you briefly have to Lust or something like that. And it's still going to be worth like pre-dismissing your pet, hitting the Lust at the very end of the dismiss cast before going into a Mythic Plus boss encounter. But yeah, as for the more philosophical discussion of like what Lone Wolf should be like, the fact you have to make this concession and the fact that, you know, sometimes you'll pick the talent point to not have a pet, but because it's optimal, but you still are forced to bring out a pet sometimes, which is, you know, like an unhasted global's worth of investment, and then you have to dismiss it after. So like, let's say you lost it for a boss encounter, you had to bring out the pet, lost mid-fight, and you know, and then the boss dies, and now you have to spend 3 seconds unhasted dismissing a pet while your team is running ahead without you. It just feels bad, and it's just not a very hunter thing to do, to constantly like bring your pet out and be like, Baba, like I only needed you for like 5 seconds. Goodbye, my lovely companion. So either Lone Wolf doesn't need to exist and marksmanship runs with a pet, which I think everyone who just heard that pretty much hates, or Lone Wolf simply needs to not make concessions on utility, meaning Lone Wolf needs to give you like a toggle or a stance that lets you pick the pet ability that you want. So like you pick Lone Wolf, you get like a little stance bar or whatever, like Ferocity stance, Tenacity stance, Cunning stance, and you get the benefits associated with having those pets out. You can put like a 5-second cooldown on switching your stance in, which would be similar to the pet swapping thing, if you really want to. But of course, remove it from the overall GCD probably. But yeah, something like that would be way better for Lone Wolf. And it's a suggestion that I've read in many places from many different people. All right, next up is Bullseye. Works the same as normal. So basically stacking up to 30% increased critical strike chance below 20% HP. Huge execute damage. Pair this with the increased critical strike damage from several mechanics. And also unnatural causes, which is extra dot damage, of which Marksmanship has a little bit in Master Marksman and some other abilities. That can be, you know, like it's one of the strongest execute specs in the game. It's not like quite an arms warrior. They literally have an ability called execute, so fair enough. But it's really, really strong. Next up is Hydrospite. This is as normal, but it used to be a class tree talent, and now we can get it as part of our Marksmanship kit. When aim shot strikes an enemy affected by a Serpent Sting, it spreads Serpent Sting to 2 enemies nearby. It works a little bit differently than usual. So obviously, let's remind ourselves, Serpent Stalker's trickery, aim shot fires a Serpent Sting. Now, when aim shot strikes an enemy already affected by Serpent Sting, it spreads it to nearby enemies. And also, just for good measure, it increases Serpent Sting's damage by 20%, which is good. Very good for like council fights with 3 to 4 targets, that kind of thing. Not necessarily worth the talent investment in Mythic Plus. It's one of those things we'll wait and see for, because it is competing with a lot of other juicy options in this part of the tree, like the middle part. Next up is Volley, which works as normal. Obviously, put down a volley of arrows, does pretty hefty damage over 6 seconds, and you have trick shots for the duration. Okay, next up is Legacy of the Windrunners. So this works, I believe, pretty much, well, a little bit differently. It's tied to Wailing Arrow now. We'll get to that. I'll actually just explain this whole thing in one go. So Legacy of the Windrunners. Aim shot coalesces 1 wind arrow that shoots your target for 20% of attack power, physical damage. Each time rapid fire deals damage, which is now 10 times when you cast it thanks to Feign the Hammer, there's a 5% chance to coalesce a wind arrow at your target. So this is just kind of passive damage in the background. Now, why this is relevant on a deep level, this is a 2-pointer by the way, and the second point increases the damage by up to 40%. Wailing Arrow is now no longer a standalone ability. So after summoning 20 wind arrows via the talent above, and you can see these two are connected, your next aim shot becomes a Wailing Arrow. A Wailing Arrow is a super-powered aim shot, essentially. Or that is how it's intended to be. On the beta right now, it's a complete mess where it's like, it's still coded as a standalone ability, and it doesn't respect the aim shot's cooldown. It's a mess. But let's just think of it as like, you press aim shot, it becomes Wailing Arrow, and basically that is a super-powered aim shot. And in fact, I have a chart here. So this chart here goes over, once they fix all the bugs with Wailing Arrow, because there are a lot, and I don't really want to like spend a lot of time on that in this video because they'll fix it. But yeah, assuming that they fix Wailing Arrow in the ways that I expect them to, here's the Wailing Arrow versus aim shot damage at multiple target counts. So on a single target, it's obviously significantly more powerful than aim shot. One thing to keep in mind is, so obviously this depends a little bit on like adding wind arrow, and which talents you have that add damage. For example, focused aim just increases. This is with all the aim shot damage increases. And on this side we have a Wailing Arrow, and you can see on most target counts, and especially like uncapped AoE, but like the more targets you get, the better. Wailing Arrow just becomes better because indeed, if you read the tooltip, it is completely uncapped, unlike trick shots. Trick shots hard caps at 8 targets with light ammo, and this is why aim shot doesn't grow beyond this point. Whereas Wailing Arrow, besides being stronger at 8 targets already, will only continue to get stronger. But it's also significantly stronger even on a single target. So yeah, Wailing Arrow is quite strong. The main problem is, and it still has this auto silence, but now that it becomes like part of your rotation, you can pretty much never rely on using Wailing Arrow as a silence or AoE kick anymore. Because you're not going to hold an aim shot for a kick unless it's like life or death situation, right? Yeah, and this leads into Readiness, which is Trueshot grants Wailing Arrow, so basically instantly turns your aim shot into a Wailing Arrow. And you generate 2 additional wind arrows while in Trueshot, meaning when aim shot coalesces 1 wind arrow, it'll basically coalesce 3 in each aim shot. And also resets the cooldown of rapid fire and generates 2 charges of aim shot. Now this last part is, while powerful, it's kind of annoying to play with, because it basically just means that sometimes when you aim shot, you will just get a rapid fire and 2 charges of aim shot immediately back. And now you're just capped on all your abilities. Like, obviously, getting more of your juiciest abilities is a strong thing. And it's a nice problem to have, I guess. But it doesn't feel very good when you're sort of caught up in your rotation, you're hitting all your cooldowns at the right time. Then it turns into Wailing Arrow. You hit the Wailing Arrow, and now suddenly you're way behind again. And this feels especially bad on AoE, where you still have to, well, I say still, so in season 3 and 4 of Dragonflight, we don't have to multi-shot during Trueshot to keep trick shots going. But obviously we're losing our tier set, getting another tier set going into the war within, and now we do have to multi-shot between every single aim shot and rapid fire during Trueshot. So you combine this completely overcapping all your abilities with the fact that you have to spend every like second or third global on multi-shot during Trueshot in particular, and you're just drowning in abilities that you really want to press but you can't because the game forces you to press all these multi-shots. So this is sort of a two-parter problem where, okay, it would be more tolerable if you did not have to multi-shot during Trueshot all the time, but that leads into a whole other thing, which is that multi-shot does so much damage that you probably want to cast it anyway. Yeah, just needs a rethinking. Another point on this whole like legacy wind arrow into wailing arrow into readiness thing is that like legacy, it's such a it's powerful, but it's a massive investment, and it means that you like it's 2 points just to get through Legacy of the Windrunners, which Legacy of the Windrunners is terrible on its own. Like the wind arrows do not like do very low damage, and you don't get that many of them, and so you're investing 2 points in a really like weakly tuned and kind of lame passive talent just to get to the juicy stuff, which is wailing arrow and readiness. The fact that it's 2 points just feels it just feels bad. If it was 1 point, it would be tolerable because of the rewards you get, but the fact that it's 2 points also means that like if you're making an AoE build, you cannot have all of your sort of AoE kit, really. Because as we talked about, like while Wailing Arrow is significantly more damage than an aim shot on a single target, what really makes Wailing Arrow juicy is that like on AoE, it's almost double the damage, right? Or potentially more than, once we get to higher target counts. So you cannot build an AoE build with Marksmanship that has all the AoE mechanics in it, mostly because Legacy of the Windrunners is so darn expensive. And also because focus aim, this seems to be a bug though, but we'll get to that in a moment. I think that's all the ranting I had to do about Wailing Arrow. Maybe I'll come back to more. Alright, next up is Trueshot. It works the same as usual. It's Trueshot. It's good. Not much to talk about. Focused aim. So aim shot and rapid fire damage increased by 5%. What you'll notice here is that even as I give it 2 points, it stays the same. It's currently bugged. It's actually meant to be a 1-pointer that gives 5%. So that does make the kit a bit cheaper once that is fixed. Yeah, so that's good. But yeah, it's pretty boring talent, isn't it? Next up is Razor Fragments, which is also the same as usual. When basically on AoE, you gain Death Blow, kill shots. Those kill shots will cleave for significantly more damage on up to 6 targets. It's reasonable for AoE, but like once again, the AoE kit is so expensive. Like if you want all the bells and whistles, that there's just no room for these kill shot talents. And that's probably fine, because pressing kill shot in AoE kind of feels a bit bad in my opinion. Next up, Wailing Arrow we've talked about, so just moving straight onto Eagletalon's True Focus, which is quite interesting. So True Shot lasts an additional 3 seconds, we know that, and reduces the focus cost of aim shot by 50%, and causes your next, or in general, causes your Arcane, Chimera, and Multishot to be cast again at 30% effectiveness. So why would they do this? Well, it's basically because they don't want it to feel terrible that when you generate 2 charges of precise shots every time you aim shot during your cooldowns, they don't want it to feel terrible that you only have to cast 1 multi-shot between your aim shots and rapid fires, particularly in AoE. And you're basically constantly wasting precise shot stacks because you're more busy hitting aim shots and rapid fires. So they fixed that by basically making the abilities hit twice during True Shot, the second one for lower effectiveness, but more crucially, it will consume both charges of precise shots. And I think this is a pretty elegant solution. It does have some crazy implications for multi-shot, which we'll get to in a moment. Next up is Calling the Shots. So this used to be a choice node with Unerring Vision, but now it is a, like you can get them both, meaning you can both get the stronger Unerring Vision, like stronger True Shots via Unerring Vision, and with Calling the Shots, you can get more of them. Already with like roughly 25-30% haste on the beta, with like pretty poor play and like high latency, I'm getting True Shot cooldowns of around 130 without Lust and potentially lower with. And, you know, depending on the ultimate talent build we end up running and all that stuff, you know, especially combined with a certain Sentinel talent. Down here, it's called Sentinel Watch. Whenever Sentinel deals damage, the cooldown of True Shot reduced by 1 second up to 15 seconds. There are potentially 1-minute True Shot builds up for grabs here, which could be super juicy. And the fact that we have that option, that we can basically turn this 2-minute cooldown into a close to 1-minute cooldown with these 2 mechanics, that is really cool. And it means like if you don't care for the cooldown reduction, you just don't run it. You put the point somewhere else. customizable cooldown timings is super cool in my opinion. So big fan of that. Alright, next up is Small Game Hunter. So this is the beginning of the multi-shot craziness that we're going to be seeing in the War Within at the moment. Multi-shot deals 100% increased damage. An explosive shot, which we always have, thanks to it being so nicely placed in the class tree, also deals 25% increased damage. So if you pair this 100% multi-shot damage with precise shots plus 70% multi-shot damage, with Eagletalon's True Focus, which is plus 30% multi-shot damage during True Shot at least, with Bullet Storm, which maxes out at plus 70% multi-shot damage, well, we get something that looks like this. So this is, with all the bells and whistles applied to multi-shot, it's damage against aim shot during True Shot. So during True Shot, with precise shots, so you do have to cast multi-shots, aim shots still to generate those precise shot stacks, and with Bullet Storm stacks, which you also get from hitting rapid fires and aim shots, well, you're stacking your multi-shot up to do significantly more damage than an aim shot does, which is supposed to be a signature ability. And of course, since aim shot stops increasing beyond the 8th target point with light ammo, multi-shot damage, and this is with the, this is accounting for the fact that multi-shot does reduce damage beyond 5 targets. This is why you have this little break in the graph here. I'll zoom in a little bit so it makes you can see it better. Multi-shot damage on particularly uncapped AoE just starts going absolutely crazy, reaching close to double aim shot eventually. So yeah, multi-shot really slaps hard, and I've found in like dummy testing and stuff, like multi-shot can easily be anywhere from 20 to 30% of your overall damage on AoE now, which is more than any other ability, any other individual ability at least. So it's kind of ending up being, it doesn't strictly change the way we play that multi-shot is this powerful, but the way we normally think about marksmanship AoE is that we're casting multi-shots to enable trick shots to make our aim shots and rapid fires more powerful. But with how powerful multi-shot becomes with all these mechanics, it's more like we're casting aim shot and rapid fire with trick shots to give ourselves bullet storm stacks and to give ourselves precise shots, just so that multi-shot can do its full, completely crazy damage. It doesn't affect gameplay, but just the fact that the spec now fundamentally works like this suggests that maybe they went a bit overboard on adding all these damage multipliers to multi-shot. Alright, next up is Kill Zone. Your spells and attacks deal 8% increased damage and ignore line of sight against any target in your volley. So if you check the class tree talent video in the description, obviously Sentinel Owl doesn't exist anymore, so Kill Zone basically grabs the line of sight mechanic from that. And I mean, it's pretty niche. It's more of a flavor thing. Obviously the main value of this is that during the short window of volley, we do 8% increased damage to everything in that volley. And which is just enhances our short-term burst, especially when that's 45-second timer. And that is obviously a nice thing. And, I'm sure there will be situations where the line of sight can be valuable, but considering it's only 6 seconds, like during volley every 45 seconds, it'll be quite niche in my expectation. All right, next up is Readiness, which we've talked about already as part of the trifecta of Windrunners, Wailing Out, and Readiness. Unerring Vision, it's also the same as normal. Basically just, critical strike chance and damage to your True Shot. Pairs well with all of these other crit damage and crit chance mechanics that we have. And just means that True Shot is more powerful towards the end of its duration than in the beginning. Next up is Salvo, also works the same as usual. For the most part, you can just macro it into volley. Although, given that, especially during True Shot, at the end of True Shot, you're more powerful than at the beginning of it. But you usually pop a volley early on, it may actually be worth either holding the volley for later in the True Shot, or at the very least decoupling salvo and volley and using salvo manually to ensure that you get those 2 juicy explosive shots late in True Shot when you have 20% critical strike damage and plus 10% increased critical strike chance. So yeah, that's pretty much the tree. And now for my feedback on it. So I've already given feedback. A few things that I didn't get to while going through the tree is some of the pathing choices that are being made here. So for example, the fact that careful aim is required, and this is mostly a single target thing, because again, on AoE situations, especially Mythic Plus, mobs often dip below 70% HP too quickly to get serious value. But this talent is required to get Barrage, which is like, these talents are so far away from each other in terms of their application and their usefulness that it just seems super strange, in my opinion, that they are connected in this manner. Meanwhile, especially with Rapid Fire Barrage, which pairs super well with Fan the Hammer, these two talents are like, you know, bread and butter. So I think that Careful Aim and Fan the Hammer should probably exchange places, because Fan the Hammer, Barrage, Rapid Fire Barrage is a super logical progression. And so these talents down here, Death Blow, Killer Accuracy, and Razor Fragments, are a bit more single target oriented. Razor Fragments is a little bit, it's mainly AoE, but especially Death Blow and Killer Accuracy. Kill Shot being more of a single target button than others. Like, swapping these would just make way more sense in my opinion. So that's the first pathing thing. Second pathing thing is, well, it's not really, yeah, so it's basically that, it's not really a pathing thing. It's mostly that Legacy of the Windrunners is too expensive and that it's really difficult to make a build that has all of the AoE bells and whistles. Because, like, what do we need for AoE? Okay, well, can we reset this? Let me just refresh this page. So let's try and make, okay, I just didn't want to, where's the reset button? I'm sure someone is screaming at me in the comments now. I'm just going to reload it. All right, here we are. Let's try and make an AoE build. Okay, so we obviously need our essentials here. Multi-shot, trick shots are required. We don't really need improved steady shot. We can just kind of skip that because we just don't need the focus. Crack shot is pretty nice to have, but maybe this is a disposable talent. However, one of these is needed for Master Marksman, which is mandatory. So I guess this is another pathing problem. Like, Master Marksman, great. Crack shot, mostly great, but I could imagine that we might not always want to run it. Improved steady shot, useless. So now to get this super powerful talent, we need to use this kind of useless one. Or not useless one, but like, basically, if this was decoupled or you could get Master Marksman in another way, you just have more talent flexibility. Alright, well, we gotta grab that. Surging shot, super strong, let's pick it. Penetrating shot, super strong, let's pick it. Fan the Hammer, obviously, with everything else we've added to Rapid Fire, super strong. Let's go back and grab Streamline as well. So now we have peak power Rapid Fires. These are all the Rapid Fire increases. Okay. So let's say we don't need heavy ammo for now. We take Bulletstorm because, as we talked about, multi-shot damage is super juicy. Okay, tactical reload. Well, you need one way to get to Lone Wolf. There are a few ways, but tactical reload is pretty damn strong. So let's grab it for now. Maybe we'll change our minds later. Bullseye, super powerful execute. Less useful in Mythic Plus, but certainly on AoE fights in the raid, it's still super powerful. But more importantly, you absolutely, yeah, so also with all the critical strike damage we have, like Bullseye is just going to be worth picking, even if fights die relatively quickly. But maybe we can change that later. Okay. We're going to skip Death Blow because Kill Shot is more of a single target thing than AoE, and we're trying to make an AoE build here. Okay, well, we need to get Barrage now, mostly because we want Rapid Fire Barrage. Maybe it's not even going to be numerically strongest to do so, but certainly it's something you'll want to try out, right? But now we have to get through Careful Aim just to get Barrage, just to get Rapid Fire Barrage. Once again, strongly think these two should be swapped out to not have to make this choice, which is not really fun for Mythic Plus, for talents that are super Mythic Plus friendly, right? Alright, let's get Lone Wolf. This is an AoE build, so having a pet out is just not going to be very strong for AoE. Okay, well, we still need to unlock this last part. So what are our choices for... what are our choices? Okay, well, there's Lock and Load, which is solid in all situations. It is not the juiciest for AoE, but Serpent Stalker's Trickery is a super powerful talent in all situations, especially for like prio damage in Mythic Plus. But Hydra's Bite is also strong for Mythic Plus. Okay, so now just to get the Hydra's Bite, we need to invest 1 point in Lock and Load, which we don't necessarily want, but we needed to get Serpent Stalker's Trickery. As you can see, there's no other way of getting it. And then Serpent Stalker's Trickery. And now but now we already unlocked the last part, and like Hydra's Bite, we want to spend more points down here. We cannot afford Hydra's Bite. But we needed to spend the points somewhere, and the alternative is like, okay, you can pick Night Hunter and in the Rhythm. These are also fine choices. But then you're losing at least some prior damage out here. But I think maybe this could be a decent choice. Also, if you want volley, well, you're either going to have to path through, and this is a sick AoE talent, well, now you still need, so lock and load, and then Serpent Stalker's Trickery, and then either volley or Hydrospite, which are both really juicy AoE talents. But you cannot have both, because now, like, we have 2 more points than we need to get into the bottom row. So just lots of forced choices here that lock you out of the choices you want to make. Okay, well, we get volley. Let's say like volley is super juicy. Everyone likes playing with volley in AoE. We need our cooldown. Let's say we don't need calling the shots for the moment. Like having a shorter cooldown is probably going to be worth it, but let's say Eagletalon's True Focus definitely mandatory. It's just super strong in AoE situations. We're always going to want to pick this. Unerring Vision, also super strong. Makes our cooldown stronger. We love it. Okay. So we've unlocked that. Okay, well, how many talent points do we have left? Okay, we have 6 left. So I really want Wailing Arrow, because we looked at this chart, and Wailing Arrow does kind of crazy damage on AoE, especially uncapped, and we're trying to make an AoE build, right? Well, that's 2 points straight into Leg of Seer to Windrunners, which really sucks for AoE. Like 2 almost wasted points on AoE. But now at least we have Wailing Arrow, and we have Readiness. Do we care for Readiness that much? Maybe not. Let's just try and start with a Wailing Arrow here. Okay, next up, we really want Salvo. Salvo is super powerful for AoE. And if this was fixed, we could actually get it. However, right now, this is what we end up with. Once they fix it so that this focus aim is a 1-pointer, we can actually get 2 capstones, Unerring Vision and Salvo. But like, okay, what are we missing out on? We're missing out on Readiness, which is the capstone node for Wailing Arrow. Is it super? And it's not that strong. It's not that strong for AoE, to be fair, because having the cooldown reset happen when you need to multi-shot anyway, like you're not really cooldown limited in Trueshot. So this is fine, but you will generate way more Wailing Arrows in general with this, which is super nice for AoE. So would kind of have liked Readiness. Like triple capstone would have been super fun to play. But okay, let's say we wanted the shorter AoE cooldown as well. Like basically the choice is, like we can't have Hydrospite. That one is just out. We cannot have Kill Zone, which, you know, it would be potentially useful in Mythic Plus and also just enhances our AoE burst with volley. In the Rhythm is not really AoE specific, but it would have been fun to play with. Also, remember, I haven't even picked the heavy ammo or light ammo. There's simply, the tree is too expensive to get all the bells and whistles of the AoE kit. That is basically what I was arriving at. Now, a single target build is quite a bit better for this. So let's try that. Let's just make a single target build from scratch. So we're just skipping all the AoE talents in the beginning. Let's grab that. Let's grab that. 40% of rapid fire is useful whether it's AoE or single target. We like lock and load. We like this. We like this. No need for volley or Hydrospite. They're not really essential. Steady focus we don't care for. Chimera shot we don't care for. Lone Wolf is still a damage increase on AoE, and also then that's pretty much it. Careful aim we want. We don't want barrage for a single target. Aim shot and rapid fire crit chance is good. In the Rhythm is good. Death blow is also good, and the killer accuracy is also pretty good. Maybe we'll change our minds on this later. Bullseye is insane for pure single target, obviously. Okay, well we need to spend some more points to get deeper into the tree. So we have the choice of Hydrospite, which is really low value for single target. Or we have the choice of Volley, which is okay for single target, but it's more of an AoE talent for obvious reasons. Or we can pick a focus on Steady Shot. Among this, so this is going to be like, okay, if you want something passive, you pick Hydrospite, which is probably super low value, to be fair. Or Volley. I'm just going to pick Volley. Okay. This unlocks Race of Fragments, which is more of an AoE thing. I think we skip it for single target. Let's get our cooldowns. So this is basically always an essential trifecta. Aim shot and rapid fire damage is always good, but we don't really want more points than this. This should be 1 point, by the way, so keep that in mind. Let's see. Okay, we still have 5 points left over. So, well, we can go into Wailing Arrow. This is a pure single target build. It is better than aim shot, but not by much. And we do have to invest a lot in Legacy of the Windrunners to get it. But as you can see on AoE, on single target, we don't really have most of the same problems. Because obviously these two here are purely AoE capstones, or mostly AoE capstones. And this is also AoE. So yeah, let's see. Let's just try and invest everything into this. So we're left with 1 talent point left over, which we can use on calling the shots to bring our Trueshot cooldown down to 130. Or if we really don't care for a shorter cooldown, then we can just go kill zone and give ourselves a little bit more burst via the 8% damage increase during volley, which is pretty low value overall. Yeah, let's say something like that. Pretty solid AoE build. Single target build. I keep messing them up. And we don't really have most of the same problems as for AoE. So basically, to summarize, feedback is mostly there's some pathing issues and some cost issues within this tree. Especially, and you cannot build it's impossible to build a satisfying MM AoE build on the beta right now, just because there are not enough talent points to go around, and a big part of that is that Legacy of the Windrunner costs 2 points. And also Fender Hammer and Careful Aim should probably swap places. Master Marksman being hidden behind Crackshot limits talent flexibility a lot. Lock and Load leading into Serpent Stalker's Trickery, which is mandatory for volley, is just, this really sucks. This is a single target talent for all intents and purposes, leading into a borderline mandatory AoE talent. So you're basically investing 2 semi-single target points. Lock and Load, it's valuable for AoE as well, but you have to consider on AoE, we're not really that cooldown limited. Because we constantly have to spend globals putting up trick shots, right? It's very rare that you're just spamming multi-shot or steady shot during AoE. So the value of Lock and Load is much more limited on AoE than it is for single target. And the fact that it's required for Serpent Stalker's Trickery, another single target talent, that it's then required, so 2 points of single target primarily investment for a mandatory AoE mechanic just kind of sucks in my opinion. But yeah, pluses are flexible Trueshot cooldown between mostly Sentinel and so Dark Ranger obviously doesn't quite get this. And calling the shots, which is good. So stronger, shorter cooldown True Shots is good. Wailing Arrow is okay. Readiness is not very fun, especially the second part where it resets the cooldown. The power of it is limited because we're not cooldown limited, so it would be better if it just did something else and also more fun at the same time. Legacy of the Windrunners is too expensive. We talked about that. Yeah, and I think that pretty much covers my feedback for the tree overall. So at this point, I guess I'm just really interested in hearing your feedback. Whether you agree with me or not, it's crucial, in my opinion, that you let Blizzard know whatever you think. Even if you disagree with everything I said, you should let them know what you think, because chances are you have some ideas that I've missed, some good ideas, that would be an improvement to the spec overall. My overall thoughts is that this is a good start. Rough around the edges, especially with talent placement, especially with AoE Kit expense. You really just can't get a satisfying AoE build going. And yeah, that's the primary thing. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. The survival spec tree video will be forthcoming. Be sure to check the description for my Beast Mastery video and my class tree video, and much more. Once again, to support what I do here, check out the Patreon for some sick perks. And yeah, until next time, I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening. I'll see you boys and girls in the next one. Bye-bye.